So the wrestling world is still buzzing, still talking about the departure of Paul Heyman from the Raw creative team. Bruce Pritchard taking over as the executive director for both shows. Paul Heyman just becoming an on-screen talent or an in-ring performer, as they called him previously. I'm looking forward to seeing Paul Heyman face off against John Cena, was the comment by Hannibal on our last video. Appreciate the comment, Hannibal. Big fan of your channel, big fan of your work. And I think, having thought about it and having to stewed on it a little bit for the last few hours, I think this is the beginning of the end for the brand split and the brand extension. How many times has WWE done this now? This is the third proper brand extension that they've had. Obviously, they had the original one back in 2002. They had the new one in 2016. When SmackDown moved to USA Network, and then they had this newer one when SmackDown moved to Fox and Raw premiered on USA last year. So this is the third time they've done the brand extension, and this is the third time that it just hasn't worked. And that's up for discussion for another video in terms of the execution of the attempt of the brand extension by WWE, making them separate shows, having actual separate rosters, having no crossover, keeping things completely separate, especially in terms of production, having the shows shot differently, look different, feel different, sound different, you name it, that's how you do it. And they haven't done it. Now, the first time they did it, back in 2002, initially I think it was a success because they really did keep things separate for a long period of time. It was only, I would say around the late 2000s, around sort of 2007, 2008 is the waters started to be muddied a little bit between Raw and SmackDown, and then eventually in 2011 it just got completely abolished. Raw was a super show every week. People from Raw were appearing on SmackDown, people from SmackDown were appearing on Raw, and it was over. And I think this is going back to the Paul Heyman news last night. If you haven't heard, Paul Heyman is out. Bruce Pritchard is in for both shows. There is no longer writing teams for Raw and SmackDown. There is one writing team for both shows, which Bruce Pritchard will oversee. Now, I went into all the reasons why this is likely to happen, ratings, etc., etc. You can find that link in the description box below. But I think it's the sign of the brand split coming to an end. As I mentioned, Paul Heyman is out the window. You now have a writing team for both shows. So Raw and SmackDown are going to become just extensions of each other, I think. Because how can it not be? When you've got the same person writing Raw as the same person that's writing SmackDown, it's easier for them to just continue a narrative thread across both shows. If you're going to have to write two separate shows, and it's one team writing two separate shows, it's just going to be very, very difficult. The workload is going to be incredibly high. And I know WWE said they're going to consolidate the creative process and streamline it, but to me it makes it incredibly more complicated if they have those rosters be completely separate. Factor in a few other factors here as well. So with the wildcard rule that has been, they haven't called it the wildcard rule this time round, but it's the wildcard rule. Now, the wildcard rule previously was when they did a superstar shakeup after WrestleMania 35, and the USA Network was not happy with the picks that went to Raw and was not happy with the picks that went to SmackDown. A couple of weeks later, Vince McMahon comes out and he says there's a wildcard rule. I think, was it 3 superstars or 4 superstars could appear on Raw from SmackDown and vice versa. That got changed very quickly when a whole lot of SmackDown stars appeared on Raw and a whole lot of Raw superstars appeared on SmackDown. It was essentially just one big roster. And then after this version of the brand split only been going, 3-4 months? Maybe a little bit longer than that. The wildcard rule appeared again. Suddenly this time it's a superstar can appear on the opposite brand up to 4 times a year should they wish. That rule again will disappear very quickly. The rule that they can appear 4 times a year will change very quickly. I won't be surprised at all that changes to they can just appear when they want. Again, it's another sign that the brand split is coming to an end. And I think another factor into this is NXT versus AEW. Now, I'm going to do a separate video on this shortly, but there was rumours that Vince McMahon isn't entirely thrilled with NXT at the moment, and that's mainly because they lose every week to AEW. Now, this week there's only a couple of thousand in it, but every week for the last, I think I don't know how many weeks now, but it's been a while, and AEW 90% of the time has pulled in a higher live viewership than NXT. Now, some people will say, "Oh, Vince McMahon doesn't care." You obviously do not know Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon hates to lose, even at the smallest things. Vince McMahon hates to lose. There is no doubt in my mind that it infuriates Vince McMahon that another wrestling company is beating him in live viewership every Wednesday night when he has his own program in the same time slot on cable television like NXT. So the rumor has been that he isn't going to make any creative changes with NXT, and he isn't going to insist that Vince McMahon starts booking NXT. It's still going to be Triple H's baby. But the idea that has been floated around is that we could start to see more superstars from Raw and SmackDown appear on NXT, which again would spark the end of this brand extension, because once you've got stars appearing from Raw and SmackDown on NXT, and I guess that would lend for NXT stars to appear on Raw and SmackDown, it just becomes one big roster, and they do just become all essentially the same shows. Now, what that would mean for superstars currently in NXT who are learning their craft and trying to get over before they get to Raw and SmackDown, I don't know. I don't know what that means if superstars from Raw and SmackDown appear on NXT. Will it pull in a high live viewership on a Wednesday night? I think it would. I think it would bring in more live viewers. Look, if you've got Roman Reigns appearing on NXT, that's not to say that he will. Or if you've got Drew McIntyre appearing back on NXT with the WWE Championship, it's going to draw viewers. It is going to draw viewers. And it would certainly make the Wednesday Night Wars a lot more interesting. But like I said, NXT isn't exactly a million miles off AEW at the moment. Now, this past week, it was only a couple of thousand, in it. Some weeks it's larger than others. But maybe Vince McMahon is looking at that thinking, well, if there's only a couple of thousand, if I can throw in a couple of main roster talents onto NXT, then maybe we'll start beating AEW more frequently. And look, when it comes to his investment calls, he wants to tell his investors and the people that own stock in WWE, we're beating AEW on Wednesday nights, because that's going to come up. That's always going to come up. You know, why are you losing on Wednesday night to another wrestling company? You're meant to be the premier wrestling company in all of the world. Sorry, not wrestling, sports entertainment company in all of the world. So again, another reason why this brand split may be over. And another reason I think the brand split is coming to an end is you just have to look at the Raw and SmackDown ratings, don't you, quite frankly. They're not good. They're not good. They are going down. Raw particularly has been hemorrhaging viewers for the longest time, even prior to going to 3 hours. But I think going to 3 hours has just sped up the process of the sinking ship. It's just allowed more water to get on board here. Because, and I mentioned it last night, that 3 hour process, it's not... The reason that Paul Heyman's been fired and the reason that Raw is such a difficult show to watch is not a Paul Heyman problem, and it's not really a creative problem. It's a WWE and USA Network problem. The 3 hour show every single week just does not work. I mentioned last night, I mentioned the metaphor, if you like, or the analogy that if a Marvel film came out every Monday night that was 3 hours long, even Marvel, which are the highest grossing films of all time, even a Marvel film, after a few weeks, people would go, you know what, I'm tired of this. I'm bored of this. You know, and so WWE is no different. And WWE is no Marvel, okay? WWE is not drawing the money that Marvel Studios is, okay? So that's just what it is. And until they change that and address that, the Raw ratings are going to go down. But the SmackDown ratings haven't been much better. SmackDown's on network television. They are the most viewed live professional wrestling program out there and the most viewed live professional wrestling program in WWE. But their ratings should be a lot higher. They're on network television in prime time on Friday night. And their ratings recently have been just over 2 million. Now, of course, there's extenuating circumstances. There's different factors at play here. You've got the current landscape of the world that it is. You've got no fans there. You've got empty arenas, all of this stuff. And you've got more people watching the news probably than anything else. And quite frankly, people have got other things to worry about with their lives at the moment than watching wrestling on a Friday night. But Fox doesn't care. Fox paid $1 billion for SmackDown, and they expected ratings and that's why you got to remember when WWE signed these contracts with NBC Universal to put Raw, or keep Raw, shall I say, on USA Network and have SmackDown on Fox, is because it was assumed that WWE is still a big ratings, draw. That lots of people still watch wrestling. Now, ratings across everything, across television, I suppose, have gone down due to the diversification, how people watch content, streaming, people watching things on demand, etc. But WWE was still considered to be, and is still considered to be, a draw when it comes to live viewership. But when you bear in mind that SmackDown had 4 million viewers during their premiere and is now just over 2, they've lost 50% of their viewership base from that first show. So once again, Vince McMahon's response to this will be, okay, the separate brands thing isn't working. We need as much star power on each show as possible. We have to, because we need to draw the ratings. The networks are not going to be happy if our ratings continue to sink. But once again, I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer for Raw is you have to change it from a 3-hour show to a 2-hour show. For SmackDown, I think the answer is the creative issues. Now, Bruce Pritchard's just been given a promotion, but some of the creative storylines on that show recently have been awful. I think Shorty G. I think Roman Reigns versus King Corbin with dog food. I think Jeff Hardy drunken DUIs. There's loads of stuff. There's Goldberg versus Reigns at WrestleMania. There's Goldberg versus The Fiend at Super Showdown. There's some of the creative here on SmackDown has been appalling. Last week you have the Universal Champion, the biggest champion on that brand, getting pranked with slime and exploding protein shakes. This is the sports-centric $1 billion franchise that Fox paid for. Exploding protein shakes and slime and dog food. It's just, that's a creative problem there. Much more of a creative problem than on Monday Night Raw for me. So that's, again, but it's a reason why Vince McMahon, I think, is going to have more Raw superstars on SmackDown and more SmackDown superstars on Raw, because he thinks he needs the star power. But I think the problems go deeper than that. I really do. Now, another reason I think the brand split could be ending soon is, look, you got to look at the location that they're in at the moment. They're filming Raw, SmackDown, and NXT all in the same city. NXT, of course, is at Full Sail, but Raw and SmackDown are at the Performance Center. It's the same location. You have to look at available talent. Not all talent is currently working. You have people like Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn who are sitting at home due to concerns about safety and well-being, and absolutely correct of them. But you've got also people in other countries. I hear like Bobby Roode hasn't been on any of these shows because he has to travel in from Canada. There isn't a full roster available for WWE to use at the moment. So they might look at the logistics of Raw and SmackDown and NXT at the moment and think, well, is it easier if we just get rid of this whole brand split and then we have the most superstars available to us? We can have them on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. They're being recorded or taped in bulk at the moment in the same location while we splitting the brands. Again, that to me is a short-term solution to a long-term problem here. I think it goes further than just having more superstars on one show or having a greater pool of talent available to them. At the end of the day, it fundamentally comes down to the creative issues on SmackDown and the run length on Monday Night Raw, along with some creative issues, of course, but there's fundamental issues when it comes to WWE's creative process that need to be sorted before they can even think about improving their ratings or improving their shows or making their shows more watchable. And I think now that we have Bruce Pritchard overseeing both shows, it's just a matter of time before the brand split ends. You had Vince McMahon on an investor call a few weeks ago, and he spoke about the declining ratings, and of course he mentioned the current pandemic, the world, etc. And he mentioned that Raw's ratings were down due to they had more younger talent on the show that needed to get over. But he said, but SmackDown's ratings have been fine. That is false. SmackDown ratings have not been fine. As I mentioned, SmackDown, when it debuted, got nearly 4 million viewers, or maybe over 4 million viewers. I don't have the figures at hand, but it was close to 4 million. Now, since then, like I said, they settled in, because you can never, with debut shows, it's never a real good indicator of how many shows you're going to draw week to week. Once the ratings settled in, they got about a 2.5 million live viewers each week. Factor in DVRs, maybe as about 3 million. Maybe. I don't have the DVR viewers to hand, but live viewership was always about 2.5 million viewers per week. Now, Raw was, when it when it premiered back in September, was about, I believe it was about 2.8 million live viewers. I might be wrong there, but they settled into sort of just over 2 million, between 2 million to 2.5. They were always below SmackDown. A 2.5 million would be a good live viewership for them, which they achieved a couple of times, but they settled into about a 2 million, about 2 million to 2.3 million live viewership each week. Without that third hour, they would be much closer to 2.5 averaging, without a shadow of a doubt, because that third hour dies every week. It kills viewership. But again, that's a bit of a tangent there, but Vince McMahon said, no, SmackDown, we haven't been declining on ratings on SmackDown. We have on Raw because we don't have the talent there and we don't have Brock Lesnar anymore. Again, that's false. SmackDown is declining just at the same rate as Monday Night Raw. And his excuse that we don't have Brock and we don't have stars, the writing was on the wall, and the writing is on the wall for the brand split when he says things like that. He thinks the reason for Raw's tumbling ratings is due to not having enough established stars on there, not having Brock Lesnar on there at the moment, which then would lead you to what is the solution if you say that the problem is we don't have enough established stars on Raw. He's going to move the stars from SmackDown to Raw, but he needs to keep them on SmackDown, which means the brand split is going to come to an end. That's just the way it's going to be, I think. And we're a couple of days out. This is being recorded on Friday, June 12th. We're a couple of days out from Backlash this Sunday. And I think that means that Backlash, or post-Backlash, or maybe on the road to SummerSlam in August, we're going to have a reset. The Raw and SmackDown rosters are going to become blurred. I don't know if they'll fully come out and say, the brand split is over. They might come up with some weird storyline rule like the wildcard rule in the past and have a gradual phase out of the brand split. But I think it's coming. And is it a bad thing? I worry about, again, we mentioned the younger talent. I worry about the people getting the opportunity to get over. I think Raw, whilst Raw is a really difficult watch because of the runtime, some of the talent on there that we've got the opportunity to see that we wouldn't have seen, that's been great. Seeing the rise of people like Aleister Black, Murphy, Angel Garza, Andrade, Drew McIntyre on Monday nights has been great. It's been great to see. And I worry if it's all about the established stars, if those stars are going to continue to get the spotlight. That's my concern there. But my thing with the brand extension in the first place is if you're going to do it, you've got to do it. Vince McMahon has said the phrase, you can't be half pregnant. And every time they do the brand split, they make the same mistakes. They don't keep them completely separate. There's always a bit of mingling, or it doesn't take long before Vince McMahon isn't happy with one brand, he's happy with the other brand, or he thinks one brand is declining because the other brand doesn't have enough stars on, so he starts to mix over the established stars from one show. It's tinkering. He can't allow it. Now, by all accounts, he knew that the Raw ratings were going to go down on Monday nights whilst they continued to build and establish new stars. But since the pandemic hit and ratings really hit the low ends of their projections, Vince McMahon isn't happy. And if Vince McMahon isn't happy, that means changes are going to happen. And I think that change is that the brand split is soon to be over. But this, of course, is just one man's opinion. What is your opinion? Do you think the brand split is coming to an end? Are we going to see more SmackDown stars on Raw? Are we going to see more Raw stars on SmackDown? Or are they just going to completely get rid of it altogether? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to WrestleNews 365. There'll be a subscribe button in a few seconds along with another video for you to watch. Or you can go to our channel, subscribe there and look at all the videos that we have uploaded to YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms on the screen right now. That's at 365Wrestle on Twitter and at WrestleNews365 on Facebook or Instagram. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you've come across this video today. And I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.